Morning, everybody. This is the August 22nd, 2023 meeting of the Dunn County Planning, Resource and Development Committee. Looks like all members of the committee are present. Approval of the minutes from the August 8th meeting. Okay, we have motion to approve. Mr. Supervisor Burek, is there a second? More seconds. Any adjustments or corrections? All in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye. We'll say no. Minutes are approved. We have some public comments, I think, Tom, right, that are outside of the hearing.
Yes, correct. So I'll pull, there's actually two of them that were received. I have the first one here up on the screen. Let me make it a tad bit bigger. Okay, so this first public comment was received by email on Thursday, August 17th at 7:28 p.m. This is a public, this is a public comment for the August 22nd meeting of the PR&D committee. Good morning. We own 80 acres of forest land in northern Dunn County. Last fall, we had a well and septic system put in, power brought from the road, and a 40 by 56 foot shed built. We are hoping to build a small, not so tiny, home on the property. Recently, our son and daughter-in-law approached us about building on the property, as well as potentially using the infrastructure already in place. This could save them thousands of dollars. They discussed the benefits and connections they would experience in having us close by while they do life and eventually raise their family. We talked about gardening, canning, homeschooling, gathering firewood, hunting, playing in the creek, raising goats and chickens, precious relationships, and just doing life together. In addition, we are close to retirement, and the thought of having family nearby would allow us to age in place. Our daughter-in-law is a CNA and has a huge heart and willingness to step into our care as needed. Our son has a job where he is on the road for days at a time. Being close by would also allow us to oversee things while he is gone. We are currently renting an elk mound, and relocating would make our rental available to others. We are wanting to move forward with our plans, but respectfully are awaiting approval from the county for a primary residence along with an ADU. We are excited that this could be a reality. Please consider this change to the current ordinance. Feel free to contact us with further questions or developments. Sincerely, John and Corey Schneider. Second public comment was received by email on Friday, August 18th, 3:09 p.m. from Terry Nichols. To Chair Quinn and members of the PR&D committee. In the last 2 weeks in my travels in my area, I have witnessed what I can only say is a lack of oversight. Most recently, I have witnessed a CAFO in Tanner Township travel and spread liquid manure in Springbrook Township. I count between 8 to 10 semi-trucks utilizing State Highway 40 and county and township roads. The one township road requires men working signs, and I had only one lane to pass the operation. I noticed there was more than one trucking company logo on the trucks. This type of operation seems earlier this year, as in the past, it was later due to emptying the manure pits. I contacted the local DNR office and asked if when CAFOs are land spreading liquid manure in a new field requires water testing of the existing residential housing. My answer was no. Previously, I contacted Dunn County Environmental Services and referred to Land and Water Conservation Services. My concern was older demographics such as myself and young children. On a state website, I saw that this CAFO had an expired WPEDS permit. I contacted the state and he told me that this CAFO had the required paperwork and that their department was behind in the permitting progress. I sent a follow-up email and asked if they are short-staffed. No reply at this point. I know that county leadership and staff are doing great things in their work. Spreading human septage on fields has been an issue for years. My concern is at what point does CAFO expansion become out of hand locally? The contact I talked to from the DNR didn't have an answer. As I follow the development of the county's comp plan, I'm sure I will see some great discussions, especially the rural development and groundwater recharge areas. Currently, I'm told that groundwater recharge areas are not a factor in rural development. Looking forward to the report of all the water testing in Dunn County. Terry Nichols, Town of Colfax. And that concludes the public comments.
Thank you, Tom. I would note that I think at our next meeting, we plan to have Liz Osborne from the DNR, who is sort of responsible for their review of these sorts of issues. So we'll have a chance to learn more about that and talk about it. Oh, I'm sorry.
That was at the back.
Yeah, thank you, Louisa. So we have additional public comment. Do you want, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Good morning, PRND folks and the public or anybody else that's watching. My name is Louisa Gerasimo, and I'm giving a short public comment because I know today you are going to be considering the additional dwelling unit rules in our county. And I wanted to remind everybody that you may have seen crocheted or needle pointed or some bumper sticker that says home is where the heart is. And I think everybody in our county would like to have a home. And many people are stuck in the home they have and wish they could move someplace else. But because of the various pressures that they're experiencing, a lot of people are feeling very stuck. I work with the public. I teach parenting classes. I visit with people in the jail. And in my volunteer world, I also deal with a lot of our public. And I have noticed there's a lot of discussion of additional dwelling units. I think the first time I remember hearing about this was maybe 2015 or even earlier. And some of my friends who live out on the West Coast, like in Portland, are really enjoying having an additional dwelling unit. Many of them are my age or older, and they're helping older family members age in place instead of being in a care facility. And I wanted to mention too that when I worked at an institution to help people who are age 19 to 26 who are on the autism spectrum, that these young adults were living in apartment buildings, but once they graduated from the program, needed a place to live. Many of them, before they came to our program at Minnesota Life College, had been living in an attic or a basement or a bedroom that they had had since high school. But people on the autism spectrum and many other people with disabilities are able to live quite independently if they have some assistance and have some supervision. And it's a shame to think about all the people who could live independently in an additional dwelling unit, but because we don't have that, that option is not available to them. So people with physical, emotional, and psychological disabilities are one set of population that you consider, as well as the aging population, which I think everybody has been thinking about. I know a lot of young families have a really hard time. We have two parents working. Daycare is impossible here. We're getting requests from other counties. We cannot keep up. Our daycare is a 2-year waiting list in many places. So you have to know before you're pregnant and get yourself on a waiting list. And, you know, that's not very practical. And it means that people need somebody else to help care for their children. Most of us would prefer to have our families help with that. And an additional dwelling unit would make that possible for young families, as in the letter that you received. I just wanted to say that because you are planning, resource, and development, this additional dwelling unit is perfect for you guys because it's all those things, right? And housing and homes are a resource that our community desperately needs. I met with the principal of the middle and high school in Boyceville this summer. He also mentioned the difficulty with housing in his community. So this is impacting schools, it's impacting our biggest employers. And I just want to say, without a home, how can we be our best selves? Thank you.
Thank you, Louisa. Okay, I think that's public comment for today. So we'll go on with our agenda then. We, at our last meeting, we had a public hearing and we left that public hearing open so we could revisit the discussion. And I think the primary, if I remember correctly, the primary reason was that we had not yet had a response from the town with regard to the rezone request. And have we since received one?
Yep. So I got an email from the town, and essentially they looked at the applicant's application and they said the board felt the rezone parcel fit with the town's comprehensive plans for future growth in the area of the parcel. And I would also note too that we do have the applicant here today. If we'd like to have them speak, and yeah, I can answer any other questions or refresh anybody if we need to.
Do you have any comments you want to make? Otherwise, we can, if there are questions, we can ask you. If you'd like to say something, that's fine. Okay, first question is what asking. Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming. So any other comments by the committee, regarding this issue before we close the hearing? Okay, then we will close the hearing. And without objection, I will move item 9A up to this point so we can take action on the rezoning request. So anyone care to make a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I will move approval of the rezone request.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Barrier seconds. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of the rezone request, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. And the request is approved. Thank you for coming. Staff reports. 6A, natural resource internship presentation. You're on.
I'll do a quick introduction. So this is Hunter Larson, our natural resource intern that is funded through the Conservation Alliance of Dunn County. So Hunter's been with us since May? Yep. And he's coming up near the end. So I thought it was appropriate, like we typically do, to try to have the individual come and talk about their experience and maybe the pros and cons of working in the land conservation department and everything else that they were exposed to. So with Hunter, I'll let you kind of talk about your summer.
Right. Thank you, Chase. Yeah, my name is Hunter Larson. I am a Stout student. I am going to be coming up on a close with my degree. I'm going to be majoring, or I am majoring in environmental science with a focus natural resource conservation. And that was really beneficial to be able to take part in this internship, especially with like our groundwater sampling program that we had going on this year. Just to be able to look at what this current state of our groundwater is, as well as look at trends and find out if there's anything we can do to help solve any issues going on in the county. Other than that program, I've been able to go out with NRCS, the Landmark Conservancy Group, as well as the DNR, and do some like site visits and brush cleanup just to help make this county an even more beautiful place than it already is. Yeah, it's just been an all around good time. Everyone's been so kind and so welcoming, and I really don't have any cons about this. I feel like if everyone has the opportunity to take part in an internship like this, they definitely should. So, thank you.
Any questions for Hunter?
I would just add that, Hunter did the bulk of all the private well monitoring sample collection this summer. So certainly permanent staff within the department, we, each collected maybe a couple days worth. But between Heather and primarily Hunter, he saw every corner of the county. So I think it was a benefit to have him be somewhat local with being from Colfax, and he knew the area, and we didn't have to train him on how to read a plat book and how to know the roads. But he did a really good job. He was reliable, on time. So I look forward to what his career might be in natural resources. Maybe he stays in Dunn County. So we'll see. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Staff reports, 6B, Planning Division, Introduction to Accessory Dwelling Units.
All right, so we did include a little report in everyone's packets today, but I also put together just a really short little presentation. So I'm gonna just play that now. Whoop, I gotta share still. Oh, doesn't seem to be working. Start it over. Should work. I've been having trouble with this computer. Keep it up. Oh, this might not work. My computer is just too slow.
Work 5 minutes before the meeting.
Right? We tested it out. Zoom crashed. I'd say let's do a different item, but we're not ready for that one either.
Can you send it to me or to somebody that can, or Tom?
I can try sending it to Tom.
Or is it at a location?
It might be just quicker for me to email it. I don't know if you can get in our files. Maybe you can. Yeah. The heat today is supposed to be pretty high today too. Sorry, it's working, I think.
Seems like a lot.
Here, we're all in nice buildings.
Yeah. Did it go? But yeah, I just wanted that to be a kickoff, and if anybody has any questions now, or if we're still interested in moving forward with ADUs in our ordinance.
Diane?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that both the video and the documentation you provided are really helpful. I mean, probably no surprise to anyone. I mean, I think we desperately need this. I think Ann is approaching it very sensibly, with standards that would attach. I mean, when we learn that we are getting, like the public comment we had today, and we learn that we're getting 5 or 6 questions a week about ADUs, it's definitely something that we need to move on. And I think we all learned from the housing study that we're getting older. And this might be one way to accommodate that. I'm fully supportive of moving forward.
Anyone else have any thoughts? Mike?
Yes, I noticed in the presentation that you did list some cons. And this is not for or against or anything, but as I look through here, I didn't see any cons. And if people ask us about it, I think it's important that I know what they are. And I noticed you listed privacy, regulatory difficulty, which that'd be fun, huh? And less green space. Are there other things that when this is brought forward that people bring up? What are the cons? Because there must be some things that aren't good.
So I think this stuff will come out more, I think, as we discuss it, hopefully in some public comments. I honestly tried really hard to find more cons that were clear cut that I could put in the presentation. I mean, I would imagine that regulatory difficulties would be one of them, and just trying to make sure that we keep these reined in so they're not getting out of control. Other things that might come up, trying to get septic systems that are appropriately sized, things like that. It's difficult at this stage. I think I definitely can reach out to, I'd like to reach out to Pierce County and see what they have to say about the cons. I would imagine they have an idea now that they've had this in their ordinance for a while. We can kind of learn from some of these other areas, I think, that have already tried it. That's all I can say right now.
Oh, okay. I was thinking that if I was in a city or a packed development and someone put an ADU up and has it as a rental.
Right.
I might think of that as a con.
Mhm.
But I can't think of all of them. So I think it's important as we go along here that we do identify that, because we do have to answer them to constituency and so forth.
Yep.
And I have some questions as I go through this. I made sticky notes if I can get rid of this. Shut down. Please don't shut down.
Mm-mm.
Oh, come on. Okay. Generate rental income was one that kind of surprised me. I didn't guess that was a use for ADUs, but we probably couldn't stop that if we wanted to, could we?
In some of the other, the examples that I'd shared, there were requirements for at least one of the units to be owner occupied. So either the ADU itself was owned by the landowner or the house, the main house was. That seemed to be a really common standard. I'm not sure if we could completely say no renting, but that's definitely something I could work through and find out. I know we had some statutory language about restricting rentals.
There was a 30-day
Yeah,
minimum, which would deal with VRBO type situations. Probably.
Yeah, and once again, I'm not pro or con here.
no.
I'm kind of pro, but I want to understand things. And I see the one you just mentioned, owner occupancy. We had problem with that language.
Mhm.
So I just wondering about that, rental periods.
Yeah,
I didn't understand that. It says rental periods. This is page 3. Regulating rental terms to balance long-term housing solutions with concerns about transient populations.
so I think one of the common standards applied for other communities is it has to be, a rental period has to be longer than 30 days. So they're basically restricting, like what Tom said, VRBO and Airbnb, so that you don't have all of this influx of people coming in and out of your neighborhood that aren't necessarily living there. They're just renting
Okay.
short term.
So that would be applied to the ADUs. But right now, people can do that with their homes, right? Or they are doing it.
We
but-
do not have a short-term rental zoning
Okay.
ordinance, and it is something we could look at. But at the moment, we just require a license from the health department.
Okay, and then down on page 4. Now we're down into an example, so I'm just kind of getting a feel for what some of these are. Way in the bottom of page 4, section 4. It says an ADU shall only be allowed on a lot with an existing single-family dwelling. And this is just an example. I assume if you had twin homes, we would consider yes or no, or duplexes, is that?
I think the intention of something like this in the sample ordinance is to say they're kind of keeping that density lower. So it's only with a single family, you wouldn't be putting it on the same property as a duplex. But
Okay.
again, this is stuff we'd have to work out too.
I was really surprised when you considered a basement redo as an ADU. Because I'm sure there's a lot of them around.
Typically, if there's shared living space, we're really not too concerned about somebody, living in a basement, as long as they're still part of the regular household.
Mhm.
I would not consider that an accessory dwelling unit. I would, however, if they're closing that off, they have their own separate entrance. And it's clearly separate from the living space with the
okay.
rest of the family.
Yeah, that makes that clearer. Let me see. Yeah, the short-term rentals. Yeah, so I was curious about some of those things, and like I said, as we go forward, I'm sure that there were people that will say, not in my backyard, and they will have reasons. And I'd like to know what those reasons are so I can counter them if there is a counter.
I think it's really important that we get this, in front of people a little bit as we go along, so we get that feedback. Because it is difficult right now to kind of tease that out without knowing. So I think that's maybe, that's part of this. We'll definitely need some public comment.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman. May I?
Go ahead, yeah.
I don't intend to speak for Ann, but I thought the section above, Mike, where she talked about standards, incorporating standards into any potential ordinance, I thought those represented the cons. I could be wrong about that, and there might be others, but it seemed like a pretty good summary of the issues that people might raise.
Mr. Chairman? Can the ADU be larger than the primary residence? Or is there any, the idea behind it, or equal in size, or?
I think in general, and I think it might be in the sample ordinance, I can't recall offhand, but generally they have to be smaller. So it's definitely accessory to the main house. I think I have that. Yeah, it might be there. But in my mind, I hear the word accessory and I think physically smaller. But that'd be a standard that we could apply.
Anything else? So what's your thought about next steps, Ann?
I think I'd like to reach out to some areas that have already done this. Maybe kind of hone down what the ordinance might look like, maybe some concerns that they've had, some obstacles they've run into, bring that here and we can discuss maybe a few more cons. And things like that, unless there's anything specifically that you'd like me to bring next.
It looked like Pierce County had an ordinance, so it's a county ordinance. That might be really helpful to contact them.
Jim?
I was just gonna say, can we kind of move this along so that we're not waiting for months and months before we actually consider this?
So all depends on Ann's work schedule.
So, I mean, I've already been working on tailoring an ordinance to our specific concerns and needs with Dunn County. I could probably get this going pretty quickly, but I would definitely want to reach out to these other places before I get too far. So that could be, I mean, I could definitely bring something to the next meeting, depending on the timing of everything. Yeah. It would probably be September. I can't guarantee first meeting in September or second, but it'd be September.
That would be great. Yeah. Gary,
Thank you. Would the ADU be available for all the residential like zones or some zones that say, hey, we don't want those in those zones?
I think that's something we'd want to look at. Right now, R3, for example, is a pretty dense zoning district already. Yeah, you can have multifamily housing, duplex. Maybe that's an area we might not want to include it in. Maybe we only want it in R2 and general ag, we can break that down a little bit. Other options would be to allow it in those areas with standards such as, they have to have a certain number of acres, maybe looking at density for the area, meeting setbacks, things like that.
Okay, thanks.
okay. Anything else? Good job. Thanks a lot. Let's see. We're back to you and comprehensive plan update.
I was hoping this would take a little bit because Tammy is not here yet, and this has
Uh.
been kind of her baby.
Want to change things around and wait?
Is there anything else we can do first?
Well, we could go ahead with the, let's see what we got, the
The budget?
budgets, I guess, if you want to. Yeah, let's do that. So, Heather, you want
Good morning. I'm Heather Kuhn, Register of Deeds. So in looking at the budget for 2024, I'm not sure how in depth we want to go here. I guess I can just briefly summarize, and if you have questions. I've projected that there will probably be a decline in our revenue for recording fees and transfer fees. I did a comparison for 2022 from 2022 to this time last year in 2022, and our document recording volume is down 33% and our transfer fees are down 46%. Yeah, compared to this time last year. So don't have a lot of leeway with that. The majority of the fees collected are set by state statute, and a large portion of those fees go on to the state. So overall, I guess it's a 10.9% decrease. And then for expenses, the only line items that were increased were for wages and benefits, and then also IT related expenses with an overall 3.83% increase. So I don't know if you want to dive any deeper into if you have any questions or.
Mr. Chair?
yeah, wait, you have a question?
It's not a question on what you're spending or making. It's a question on understanding the bottom line of your, the very bottom comparison, page 1 of 1 on the bottom. Go down further. Down, it's where it talks about the tax levy and tax levy increase. It's right below what you've got there. Oh, okay, so you had that, and then you've got, go down, there's just that one little line. Go down further. Keep going down. Okay, you had one little line just with boxes in it.
The highlights.
Yeah, go to the next
Yeah.
page. Okay, now
Scroll it down.
that's, then you have to go to the next page down. Because that's all by itself. If you can go one more page down. And it's the same question on it. There we go.
Okay.
There we go. Now I have to find it again. If you go down to the bottom part there, where it says 2023 budget, 2024 proposed budget, change one, et cetera. I see in 2023, look at the tax levy, please. It says 49,435. Proposed budget tax levy is 104,000. And then it says tax levy increase of 12,000. I don't understand. It was in 2023, 49 and 2024, 104. But the increase is only 12?
Yeah, so Chris probably can explain this better, but my understanding, because I asked the same thing, we had a fund balance applied of $12,000 in 2023.
Mhm.
So I think they've added that fund balance into the levy for the proposed budget for 2024, so it would be at 61,000. And then there will be an increase to our to our levy of $54,000 for a total of the 104. Does that sound about right? Would that be, did I explain that right, Chris?
Yeah, and I see all those other numbers, but it just is confusing when it says the levy increase is 12 grand. And it happens on all of them, so I thought I'd ask first time around. Thanks, Chris and Heather.
Yeah, I think Heather has it correct. In learning error, but fixable error, last year we filled the gap of salary increases with fund balance, with general fund balance. So if you think about this, if you think about it in sort of a logical sense, essentially, if you had a gap in your groceries and you took from your savings account, if the next month you had a gap in your groceries, you either have to go back to your savings account or find a different mechanism to fill that gap. So we filled it last year with fund balance, but this year we realized that we had to figure out how to fill that permanently. So we applied all the levy that we could to meet the gap. So last year, the gap was $12,000. And this year, the salary and fringe increases add another $54,000 to that number. So it's essentially the 49,000 plus the $12,000, plus then the $12,000 moves to the increase. And then the tax levy is the absorbing of, I'm gonna go back and check this, but the tax levy is the absorbing of the, you see the 54,000 hiding over here of the salary and fringe increases for this year.
You know, I had it right up until the very end. So you're adding an additional, Heather's adding an additional 12,000 towards salary and fringe.
Essentially towards last year's salary and fringe. Then you have this year's salary and fringe. So last year, if you go down one more lower level to the fund balance, you see in the third line there, you tax levy increase and fund balance. And in fund, you had $12,000 of fund balance last year. This year, we're using levy for that because we're not advocating to use the general fund again. And then in addition to that, there are $54,738 of extra salary and fringe costs. And part of that is because, a little bit of that is probably because, and I don't know all of these intimately, but that is, a little bit of that is too, is because of the
lower revenue.
the revenue decrease, yeah.
So the revenue decrease and the salary and fringe increase, yeah.
Yep, you got it.
So why isn't the 12 added onto the 54?
I think we just wanted to illustrate where that was coming from, that we were last year, she's got the comparison between the 2 years. Beata has the comparison between the 2 years. And she wants to show that in 2023, the levy was $49,000 and $12,000 of fund balance was applied this year in order to make that kind of the same, meet that same obligation. We need that to be taxed. And she just wanted that to be transparent, what that money was that was moving from last year to this year.
Okay, and so the tax levy will be 104,000 plus the 12,000, 116.
I would say that's the case because I think that line, I can't, but my guess is that, let me just do the real quick math, 204, 216, or 116. Yep, it is. It's added in there.
Okay, thank you. I understand it now, and we'll see what happens in 5 minutes. But
I hear you.
okay, and it was on all of them, so I thought I'd ask right away.
Yes, yes, and that was again our, I'll just say error for lack of a better word, because it was an unanticipated, like, oh, it made sense at the time, but practically in order to sustain it, we have to find a funding source for it to be sustainable. And so we utilized, I mean, some of it, it's a little bit of a misnomer because it's not all levy that we applied to meet the gap. I mean, we had some increased shared revenue and we had some increased, investment income, et cetera, some of that, but this reflects now what the need is, for the coming year.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Gary.
just so I get it straight in my own head, does the Register of Deeds have their own fund balance? Or
No.
you talk about fund balance, the county?
The counties, yep, the county's general fund, the county's
So
savings account.
Then they start the year at a zero then, really, because they don't have a fund balance to work with.
Yes, yep,
Which departments have a fund balance?
only highway.
Only highway now then, and not the neighbors?
I wish that was a straightforward answer, but
Oh.
no, I mean, so the way that it currently is, I will say the straightest answer is no, not the neighbors. The neighbors, positives and negatives are going in and out of the general fund at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
It is confusing. And sometimes in the issue of trying to be transparent, it ends up with more confusion. Essentially, so I think it's really always helpful to read the comments. So if you read Beata's comment, she said that we had approved the budget by applying $2,330,000 of fund balance.
How should we have handled that?
Well, this year we figured out how to just absorb it without having to a plan for recommending how to absorb it without doing anything, without carrying forward our obligation to next year or so it's all just in moving all of the numbers where you're taking different things from. But last year like I say, a newbie error.
Yep, sure. Any other questions?
An unrelated question. The only way I was able to figure this out reading through the budget is to keep my calculator in hand, and then I could understand it. But that's maybe not the best way. My question is about and it's true for everybody, and it's for Chris. The increase in IT maintenance contracts is
Yes.
pretty steep. It's like
Um,
15%, almost 15%.
Yeah, it just totally has to do with where people are at in the replacement cycle or how it is in the replacement cycle. I mean, it's entirely possible that there are, but there's so many factors that factor into it, but it's essentially a 5-year rolling amount of saving a little bit each of 5 years towards replacement. So as those costs go up, you end up having to save more. I can't speak specifically to the 15%. But that is the set aside for ongoing replacement of all of our laptops and et cetera.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
one more question. Cause there's a lot of years that the Register of Deeds has put money back into the fund balance. So wouldn't that kind of affect the tax levy in a sense? I mean, say $100,000 for a tax levy, but yeah, you put 50,000 back in because of the money that you generated. So actually, it looks worse than what it actually is.
Yes, so if you think about, literally about pots of money, or yeah, I'll just say pots of money. If you think about pots of money, you have a fund balance pot. I make it like a jar, like a vase. You have a fund balance pot. You have, how do you meet the budget? So you meet it with the things that you charge people for, the services that you charge people for. You meet it with grants and state allocations. And then you meet it with levy, what you charge the taxpayers. And then you have extra, in a sense, of kind of a savings account of this fund balance. So all of the departments are set up so that at the end of the year, except for highway, at the end of the year, if they have a surplus, it goes back into that savings account pot. And if they have a deficit, then it comes out of that savings account pot. But the levy is a set number. It doesn't change over the year. So you're right. Heather may well be running, and I believe is running, a surplus this year, and that will donate back into the general fund. But it's kind of year by year and pot by pot.
Yeah, I'll just add, that was a good explanation, Chris. I'll just add that, yeah, year to year, when you're budgeting, we just have no idea where we're gonna end up. So yes, a lot of times there is that surplus at the end of the year. We're able to put money back into the general fund. We maybe don't use all of the levy, but this year, I mean, just showing the numbers that I mentioned earlier, I mean, the real estate market, with the real estate market the way it is, we're not seeing the refinances, the documents that are submitted for a refinance, mortgage satisfaction. So that in turn is a decrease. So this year, I'm hoping to make our anticipated or our budgeted revenues, and that's why I'm taking a hard look at next year, and that's why I've lowered the revenues. So you're seeing more of the levy ask.
And again, I've said this in the county board meeting, but I think it's worth reiterating now, and we'll talk about it again next Wednesday. We asked people to submit realistic budgets, not zero increase, not because what is your cost to continue? So in this particular case, and there are a few departments that are like this, they are anticipating some revenue, like they have something that in Heather's case, a fee that they charged for a service that is expected to be less. Somewhere we need to make that up, or we need to cut a service, and then it might be a service somewhere else. But in the really big picture, we wanted departments to be able to come in at what it was going to take to continue to do business next year. And what I would say about that, we were just had a meeting yesterday, we were commenting about it. I think that the department heads were amazingly respectful of that sort of open door. And very, very few of them came in with any outside of the only real increases are there some position requests, which we've sort of pulled out so you can look at individually. And, there's a few minor operating costs, for instance, in the county clerk's office, there's $67,000 because next year is a 44 election year. There will be 4 elections, so there's more cost. But as a general rule, people were very, very respectful of kind of trying to continue to make their budgets as palatable as possible.
And I was just gonna add to, Diane mentioned about the maintenance contracts. So you'll see in my budget, it's separate. There's the maintenance contracts that are IT related.
Right.
And those are, what they have the
Oh.
breakdown for us is the standard applications of Microsoft charges for, every laptop or workstation that's in my office. Trend Micro antivirus, there's no cost to that. But then there's also enterprise applications like the phone system, how many phones you have. Yeah, your desktops. And then some, Zoom options and some other things that they've got. Standard and enterprise applications are what are applied to the maintenance contracts IT. And then I have a separate contract with our software company with Fiddler, which is for our recording software and maintenance and hosting services and the agreement that I have with our software vendor.
Yeah, and that seemed really reasonable. The other one was steep.
And you're right, that is, you're great catch, Heather, because you have replacement issues and then you have just the licensing, all the licensing for all the things that we have.
Yep, and the replacement appears in the IT equipment. Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Any other questions? So, Chris, are you available for the other?
I am.
Okay,
I'll hang out.
hang out. We need to approve this budget. Based on this discussion, and this will go, as I understand it, this will go to the full county budget board meeting, and then these are all the decisions about any changes would be made sort of as a whole within the context of the entire county budget.
Can I just point out one other thing? As you're looking at this, you see, so when you saw that jump of levy, you see that again. You see that again reflected right here. This is the additional essentially ask. After everything's all said and done, that's how much more money the Register of Deeds office needs to continue to do business if the salary and fringe
Right.
increases stay the way that they are.
So, if there's no more discussion or questions on this budget, I would ask for a motion to approve.
I'll move approval.
Supervisor Morehouse, is there a second?
Also,
Supervisor Burke seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Budget's approved. Thanks, Heather. Thanks, Chris. And ENS, who's first? Tom, okay.
I'll go first just because as we look at the spreadsheet, survey division, leads off. So I'm just gonna go through, let me get this at a size here that everybody can see, hopefully. I apologize, there's a little lag between my computer and what's up on the screen. So I have 3 sources of revenue in the survey office. You can see them here. There's land division revenue. So I'm projecting about a 1.5% increase, and that's mainly due to the increase in our fee schedule with a new land division ordinance. So I'm still anticipating the same number of land divisions to come through. It's just a slight increase on each one of those. So pretty modest there. Everything else stays the same. I'll move on to my expenses unless there's any questions on the revenue. Okay. And I'm just going to touch on the items that are showing an increase. I can certainly go into the other items if there are questions. So this top part up here, the non-yellow, if you will, is non-salary and fringe. So if we focus on the yellow items, which I have control over. So again, maintenance contracts, 9.4% increase on that. And I think that's all been explained previously, so I'm gonna keep moving on that. Internet access, again, that's something I don't control, 4% increase there. You're gonna see maintenance, repair and maintenance of our motor vehicle, it'll be our survey truck. It looks like a huge increase there, but really it's not that much, $75. An oil change right now and a tire rotation is running over $100. So we need, some years we can get by on 1, some years it's 2. So I increased that, as Chris said, to show more of an accurate reflection of the true cost that we're experiencing. So it looks like a large number there, but in reality, it's a very $75. The rest of this is all 0% until we get to the back here. Conferences, every year it seems like the cost to attend a conference is going up slightly. So I added that in here. Bear with me. On my keyboard. So a 13% increase on our conferences. So that amounts to $135 annually. So again, it looks like a big jump, but it's in the big picture, it's not all that much. So that's my budget. Very, very modest increase on some things here. I guess there's printing and maintenance expense too from IT. Otherwise, everything is at a 0% increase. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.
Any questions? Okay, thanks, Tom. Who's next? Ann?
Land and water
Land and
typically
water.
shows up next in the spreadsheet. So basically, in that section that you can see there, if you look at the PSC program revenue, that's typically for our the MDV program. If you remember me talking about that in the past, multi-discharger variance, we've had to come to this committee and county board for budget adjustments for that based on the amount of funds available that come through this program, the statewide program. So this isn't a typical grant program, which there's a whole nother grant section that I'll get to. This is funds that are actually paid to us in advance from municipalities to reduce their phosphorus limitations, or a variance from reducing their phosphorus limitations. And then we apply that money within those watersheds of the Red Cedar and the Lower Chippewa. It's hard for us to predict at this point in time what next year will bring for that type of income for that program. So as you can see, in 2023, we were at 35,670. And to be safe, we just are anticipating 10,000 for that to go down. So that's it's a money in, money out type of a situation. So that's why there's a decrease. The other, I guess there's an increase in the no-till drill rental. So we are looking at potentially changing our fees for the rental of the no-till drill, just to be in comparison with what other rental programs are in the area. So in combination of those two changes within my general revenue, as well as the levy, potential levy change, we're actually decreasing our revenue by about 4%. So largely that has to do with that MDV program. Tom, if you want to, any questions on revenue and that initial revenue source, we can jump down to expenses then. So the first big one would be cell phone. You'll see a large increase there, 350%. That's primarily due right now in our office. We have 8 staff. We have one old style flip phone that is shared amongst everyone. And then I have one smartphone that I use that has internet access and all kinds of data. In today's world with technology and efficiency that we're trying to look for in some of the work that we do, currently working with land information, I have an app on this phone that I can go out, take pictures of a site, make all my notes, and have a report done on this phone before I even get back to the office. In consultation with my staff and looking at who is interested in having a phone, one of the big concerns is about public information or public records requests. We don't encourage staff to use personal phones for any of our work due to that risk. So having a work phone is also a benefit in that way. So I'm basically requesting the need for 4 additional cell phones. We would get rid of the flip phone, and that pencils out to be this increase. Tom, if you want to scroll down, just look at our maintenance, repair and maintenance line item. Be on the next page, I believe. So that went up by about 33%, $500. That's basically reflection of a combination of increasing fees for our no-till drill rental, but also acknowledging that this drill is getting some acres on it and it costs more for repairs. So trying to balance the need for the expense as well as what we might generate in revenue. So we're hoping that those two are offsetting each other, at least that's how it's described here. And then the next line item is a reference back to that revenue I talked about for the MDV program. So that's a balance there as well. The last thing I would just call out would be if you go to, I think the next page, Tom, if we're still in land and water. Yeah, right there. So actually the bottom line for my division is a decrease in the proposed budget for expenses. And again, a lot of that has to do with that MDV program. I do have a whole nother section on grants that I can get to, but is there any questions on the expense side of my main operating budget? Okay, before we skip Tom too far, maybe I'll just call out right there, since it's that next section is just our general ENS office line items. I can speak to those. That's a combination of supplies to keep the office in operation that's shared amongst all three divisions. So you'll see there's really no request for any changes there. And then just a reminder that we do contribute to the Red Cedar Watershed Conference, and that's where that $3,000 is. I guess if you don't mind, Tom, just jump down to the grant section. So if you just look at the bottom line there on that revenue side of the grants, we're looking at about a 71% decrease in our grants. And if you recall, I came to this committee and county board for budget adjustments in the past for the NOPP program, the nitrogen optimization pilot program. That was $150,000, as well as that notice of discharge grant for that one particular farm, which is almost $800,000. We anticipate those two programs for that money to be spent this year in 2023 and not needed in 24. So that's where you're seeing that large decrease, as well as there's some other things in there regarding snowmobile bridges and stuff like that. So I guess in general, our grants, our revenues match our expenses, vice versa. So there's two sections there. The top one is the revenue. The next one is our expense. Those are all the same, just basically duplicated to show that they match. So I guess, as we move forward through 2024, there may be opportunities for more grants. There may be opportunities for some changes in some of these items. There is potential, if one of our construction project on the one farm doesn't get completely finished, we may need to request a carry forward. But in general, this grant money is, there is no impact to the levy on it other than our staff time to implement that. So with that, I guess if there's any questions for the Land and Water Conservation Division, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions?
I'm just wondering, what's the line meat processing?
Oh, yeah, good one. Probably not something you normally see. So meat processing is related to the wildlife damage program. So it's a grant program through, I guess, financed through the Department of Natural Resources and USDA Wildlife Services, or APHIS. And the meat processing is deer donations. So if at the end of the season, deer are donated to food pantries, there's a processing fee that is associated for the local meat processors to handle that. And the wildlife damage program, grant program, picks up that cost or pays a portion of that cost. So that's why you see a meat processing line item.
Not going in your freezer.
No.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Chase. And
I just wanted to start off with the revenue portion. You can see that we're basing these on projections and actuals, we've collected more zoning permits and fees for the last couple years, sanitary permits. So that has been moved up. If we go down into, I'm just scrolling here. Our zoning budget. So we're decreasing the contractual consulting services. If you can see that one, it's going from 75 to 57,000. We've managed to save some costs there now that we have more staff. We're not relying on Cedar Core. In fact, I don't believe we did any Cedar Core contracting last year. So we reduced that amount, as well as the transcription services. I did work with IT to purchase some recording equipment so that we would have, instead of just Zoom recording, we would have actual recording equipment that we could rely on. You can see that little button right there is recording this meeting right now. So that was, an attempt to kind of reduce those costs for transcription services. We will still be using some, but hopefully less. I think everything else is pretty much stayed the same other than our vehicle maintenance. That's gone up, just as Tom had explained. We also have another WCCA membership. The Wisconsin County Code Administrators Group has been really helpful for us. It's a good resource for reaching out to other zoning people in our positions in other counties in Wisconsin, and we've really appreciated being that in there and having that membership. I'm trying to see what else. I think that's all I can really touch on. If there's questions.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
And I noticed salaries and wages went down in zoning and up in planning. So did somebody move or what's the?
So we have two divisions technically. We have the planning division and the zoning division. We really didn't have, I think the only amounts coming out of planning for staff were about half of my pay. And then maybe I think a quarter of someone else's. So now we have another staff member who her budget comes more out of the planning side of things. To be completely honest, I'm still not sure how we should work that out, but every year is different, it seems.
Okay, so yeah, it's I get it. You have to split it up, make it work out, and every day you're doing something different too, right? So I see it's like 23,000 more in planning for salaries and wages and 17 less in zoning. It's about 6,000 in there. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Fran? I think that being able to divide those two positions is a really productive strategy. So anyway, no other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
And this is for Chris. On most of these line items or at the bottom, it says a budget that does not balance. Does that mean that's where we have to do all our work?
That's the work. Yep, that's the gap.
Where we gotta do the
Yep,
fine tuning?
yep. And unless someone specifically identified a major, or, a larger operational purchase, you can assume that those are either decreased revenues or increased salary costs.
Okay, that's it for budget presentations then. Thanks a lot to the staff for all the work on this. Is there a motion to approve the Environmental Services Department budget?
I will move to approve the Environmental Services Department budget.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second, Mr.
Dr.
Chairman.
Morrow seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thank you to staff.
That's
Thanks,
great.
Chris, for helping. So we're back, I think, to 6C, Planning Division, Comprehensive Plan Update. On time.
Good morning. I don't, Tom, if you're able to pull up those supporting documents. I see you guys got the binders, so I had a rookie mistake, I guess, earlier as we started this comprehensive planning project. I assumed the committee had copies of the document, and as we got discussing after the last meeting, I realized, hey, I should get everyone a copy of what we're talking about. So what was originally approved many years ago, but I think it's still a really good reference, and we can kind of work from there as far as what we have in front of us to what has been provided to us from Cedar Corps. So I don't know if the committee has any initial questions as far as the comprehensive plan goes.
Which of these documents would you like us to pull up?
So I was going to pull up, the next document would be the budget or the documents from
the
Cedar
deliverables?
Corps, correct.
Thank you.
And I guess I don't know exactly where the committee was in the past as far as what has been provided, what has been presented. And I guess I'm just gonna cut right to the chase. As a planner, I would recommend to the PR&D committee that we take these items from Cedar Corps, work with what we can, and really start over.
I don't think you'll have an objection from the committee on that.
As far as, you know, and we don't have to, I mean, I try to summarize those attachments. You know, a lot of it was reformat and it really wasn't content. And if we look at the demographics are actually old now, right? And the housing study it has phenomenal demographic information. So I think it's just a matter of now kind of regrouping and deciding what's really important for us and really what direction, you know, this is just a plan, right? This helps direct our activities, and ultimately this hopefully leads to better ordinances, right? Better intergovernmental cooperation and really help grow our communities for the next 20 years versus kind of looking in the past with demographics, or, you know, for example. It's just a tool. So I don't know if we want to dive into any of the content, if the committee has any questions about what we received. But ultimately, you see them as attachments. The land use data really just, you know, looked at what the land use was currently, and we really need to come up with a better document for the towns to look at future land use.
Anybody have any, so you're suggesting that we follow the similar outline, chapter outline as in the previous document? I think Cedar Corp did a little differently, right?
Yeah, they incorporated kind of grouped the elements together. I mean, ultimately, at the end, our comprehensive plan, the new document will have similar elements, but we may decide we want to touch on different topics. We might want to expand on the agricultural element. We may want to expand on the housing element.
Right.
So there's more opportunity to work with the future plan that meets our needs.
And the implementation section.
Correct. Yeah.
Have your thoughts about that? I mean, it seemed to me like that could be more useful to us if we spend time on it.
I agree, you know, and that's where, you know, if I looked at next steps, what I would recommend is that we come forward with a public participation plan. What does the new planning process look like? That would go through the
Yep.
committee, go through that resolution. And then honestly, I would still recommend we start at the implementation element, kind of where I started with the committee last week or
Mhm.
last committee meeting. I really think it's important to think about that end game and look at what we were looking at last time to really start an element of what we want to go in what direction we want to go to. So the implementation would be definitely something we would include in our public participation plan.
Absolutely. Good.
So if that's, I guess the next steps, that's what I'd recommend to the committee is we discuss a new planning process and move forward with a resolution and bring that forward to county board.
Are you up for this?
Of course I am.
Okay. This sounds wonderful. I think to me anyway. Anybody else agree, disagree? I think you have full committee support. So let's make this a really great process and a really good document.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
So you'll come back to us when you're ready for the next step,
Yep,
which is
the next step, that public participation plan. If that's, I can provide a draft resolution.
we
We'll talk
take that to the board, don't we?
Correct,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay.
So we can just discuss those elements and it might take a couple meetings, but at least I can draft a proposal. I mean, it depends on how aggressive we want to be as far as a committee and just something to think about. What does it look like for the committee? What kind of involvement do you want? It definitely involves a lot with our towns and our villages, even, the city of Menominee. I think that intergovernmental cooperation is going to be a key portion as we, certainly look at that growth. In our sewer service areas. Those are those key areas that we really want to hopefully focus our planning efforts on. So
Okay.
something to think about next month, our next committee meeting, and we'll just tackle it as we
That
can.
feels practical. Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right. Anything else from the staff on any topic? Other than football or baseball? No. Okay. I think that's all of our agenda items. Am I wrong? Did I miss anything? Are there any announcements? If not, then our next meeting is, Ann, go ahead.
I just wanted to let everyone know that we are currently working to create a multi-county Board of Adjustment workshop. We're working with the Center for Land Use Education to put this workshop together. We're anticipating November 1st evening. It would have Lynn Markham would be coming to assist. We'd be putting together a program, serving dinner along with it.
Oh, good.
So we're in that planning process right now, but the PRND would be welcome to attend this as well. And we can keep you updated.
Great. Sounds like a great idea. I like the dinner part. Yeah. So you got us with dinner.
I just want to say that I think the staff should eat a little more when they go on conferences. Really.
Okay. Anything else? Then we are adjourned.